Okay, I think we are live. So we are in test mode here and we are having a conversation about money. So I just want to welcome my guest, Patrick from Sweden, and Carrie all the way from the Midwest. Patrick, can you say hello so we can see if everyone can hear you?
Hi, Sweden? Everybody. Welcome from Hallstabadet in Sweden, up in the snow.
Carrie, can you hear Patrick?
Unfortunately, I cannot.
Okay, but we can hear you. So if anybody's on and you can hear us, Andrea, I see you popped on. Can you let us know that if you can hear everybody, because there seems to be a glitch, probably because we're trying to pull Patrick all the way in from Sweden. But if you can just let us know. Hey, John, how are you? Good to have you on.
Hey, John.
So, Carrie, you may be looking beautiful. So can people hear Carrie and Patrick and me? That's what we're wanting to know, because somehow we can't hear each other. We hear all three. Hey, they're hearing all three of us. I don't know how that's working. Hi, Tristan. So that's great. Well, Carrie, I know you had some questions, so I'm going to keep you on here. But Patrick, we've known each other for a while. We've been having this money conversation for, I don't know, a good 2 years. And since I kind of just, my curiosity got piqued about cryptocurrency. And one of the things that we wanted to start with today in this short little time that we have together is really the history of money. What is money? We've had this conversation where you say people don't even know what money is. So I'm going to turn it over to you so you can just kind of dive right in.
Hey, hello, and everyone watching. Welcome to this little chat. What is money? I think everyone understands what money is intrinsically. It's this piece of paper or this digital credit card that we exchange for stuff. But I think the problem occurs when we don't understand how money is created. You ask someone in today's society, 21st century, and say, well, where does money come from? And we say, well, the government prints it. And it's okay, that's true, the government prints it, but how much of the money supply is printed by the government? And you'll get varied answers. And in most third world economies, it's very different to a first world economy like America or Europe, where the money supply printed by the government is about 3 to 4% of the total supply. So if you've got $1 trillion in your, so let's make it easier, let's say $100 million, then only 3 million of those, 3%, is from the government. And so where's the rest of the money come from in the money supply? And that's what freaks people out, because they don't realize it, and they don't want to feel stupid. And they say, well, I know what money is. It's this stuff that buys stuff. Yeah, cool. But do you know that $100, 100 years ago, roughly 100 years ago today, will only buy you $4 worth of value? We've lost 96% in our value. We call that inflation. And do you know where inflation comes from? And everyone says, yeah, inflation. I say, well, where's it come from? And they don't know how to answer that question. And actually, it comes because of the money supply, the increase in money supply. That's what the banks do. That's their job in the financial system. The banks increase the money supply through loans. And those loans, they have debtors onto their accounts, and they put zeros into the economy. And all of a sudden, 3%, which might be 3 million, then the rest of it, the 97 million, comes from the banking system. That first, people don't believe you. And then when they really understand it, they get angry about it. And then they say, well, how do we fix that? But that's a different discussion. We'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, so Patrick, this kind of, once we start really thinking about the history of money and the evolution of currency and where we are today, I mean, that kind of brings up this craze that's happening with cryptocurrency. And that's sort of where we began our conversation. One of the passions that we share both as educators is really getting people knowledge about understanding the whole infrastructure of money and where, how we get to this point. Like, what the transition to even a digital currency from where we started when we were just doing that system of trade?
Well, we've only got a few minutes, so let me break that down into 2 minutes or something. So when we moved into money from barter, then we moved from that money was actually metals, and we needed to be portable. We needed to be able to break it down. We needed to make sure it was fungible. In other words, this coin would work. This site would work over here and work over here as well. And I've got this funny little thing that popped up. Anyway, so we needed to make sure it wasn't counterfeited. And as we went through around about the 700s in China, this clever mob of people decided, well, we'll take your precious metals and give you an IOU. That was the first sort of paper money, an IOU. And then that sort of went around the world, but it was really in 1660, 62, 34, in a bank here in Sweden, in Stockholm, called Banco. They had the first banknote. And actually what happened with that is there was a run on the banks, and he didn't have enough money in his bank, and he went out of business, and the government put him in jail. Interestingly enough, 2 or 3 years after that, the first central bank appeared, and that was Riksbanken, which took over this Banco system. And then it went over to London. London went over to America, and out of America came this really clever institution known as the Fed, right? A private banking that regulates money. Now, there's a whole big discussion we could have about that, but this fiat currency around, we sort of backed it with gold and various what people call intrinsic value, but around the 70s, and still a lot of people don't know this, Nixon uncoupled the gold from the dollar. So as of 1971, the dollar was worth $1 just because we said so. And that sort of really weirded people out. Okay, it's worth $1 because we say so. Now, the banking institution, to get to where Bitcoin came in and is solving a problem, is they used to have, from the beginning of banking, they used to have a 9-to-1 leverage. So if they had $1 in the bank, they were allowed to lend out $9. Right? That's weird. Imagine if we did that. But banks can do that. That's how they increase the money supply. Well, Lehman Brothers, through the early 2000s, they didn't leverage 9-to-1. They leveraged something like hundreds to 1. So for every $1 they had, if real money, guess what? There was $100 loaned out. And so when there was a run on their bank, they failed. And the financial system went into a crash because, once again, these people in the financial institution didn't really have a regulation. We call it regulated, but it's not. And at that time, there was a fellow named Satoshi Nakamoto. Well, maybe he was a person, maybe it was a group of people. He came up with this idea of a money system that would work, that wasn't based on an authority figure, and they call that Bitcoin. And Bitcoin was put into the fray in 2008, actually started in 2009. And the idea with Bitcoin was limited money supply. It meant that no bankers could just add another $1 trillion to the ledger. And so there was this limited supply which kept money. And the idea of Bitcoin means that you can use Bitcoin as an asset. In other words, you can buy it and sell it, but you can also use it as a money, which is really weird because it jumps into a couple of things. People freak out because when you buy an asset and it goes up, we talk about it's a bubble, it's going to break, but Bitcoin's not really an asset. It's an asset and a money simultaneously. And when something goes up, more people use a currency or a money, then it becomes less volatile and more stable. So this is like weird. You talk to economists and they go, it's a bubble, it's going to burst. And you talk to other economists and go, no, this could actually work. Because if you break down a Bitcoin to the smallest part, we call it a Satoshi. It's like 100 million cents in one Bitcoin. And if you got one of those cents or Satoshis equivalent to $1, then one Bitcoin would be about $10 million, which eventually when we've mined, when all the Bitcoin come into, we've found all the Bitcoin, we've mined all the Bitcoin, that's a metaphor we use, quick mathematics, I think it's $200 trillion. So there's enough money supply to do more than one country. It can do many, many, many countries. And it gives us a credible system that mathematics tells us what's true and what's not. We don't have to trust a central location anymore. And so that 2009, we went, ooh, what is this weird stuff? And everyone laughed at us. Actually, I think I'm getting right off topic. Maybe I should stop for a second.
I just want to take you, this idea of trust, because I think many of us don't feel trusting of the system. And then there's a skepticism around Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. So what you just said essentially is that this is actually, from a mathematical standpoint, a system that is essentially more trustworthy than the current system that we're using, where money is just being created really out of thin air, right? So, I mean, I think that this, it's a revolutionary time on the planet, and this is our currency is revolutionizing, right? And I also want to touch on the concept of sovereignty that we've talked about, and this idea of like privacy, decentralization, and freedom, in the way that we, kind of think of ourselves as being free, as some, especially here in the U.S. And again, if we're not understanding the history of money, we don't understand what's really going on. If we are not educated on the facts, then we really can't make an empowered decision or choice. So I think part of, our passion is really getting people educated, because cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, it's an unfamiliar topic. There's a lot of fear that comes up when there's things that you're not quite familiar with, and that there's, it's a change. We're in a time of change. We are already moving to digital currency with credit cards. Everything's online. It's not much different, because that's the path that we're headed on, right?
Hey, you picked up credit cards, and I think it's really, 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 really important to understand how credit cards work. Do you even know where they come from? Do you know why they exist? Why credit cards exist?
You're quizzing
me? Do you know
me?
the story?
This is all our conversations. Do you know?
Right. So imagine this, right? You've been given a letter of credit. You're going from America over to Europe, and none of the bankers over here accept your letter of credit. Now, you're pretty peeved. You go back and say, that's never going to happen to me again, and I'm going to start off this idea of a credit card system. That was in 1952, and you know that card is Diners Club. No one said will ever use credit cards. What a load of rubbish. It'll never, ever, ever work. It's a Ponzi. It's a pyramid, blah, blah, blah. 1956, a new player came along and said, hey, American Express said, this is an interesting concept. Now, I ask anyone who's watching or listening to this, do you have a credit or debit or Master or Visa, Discovery, Amex? Do you have one of those cards? How much money or things do you buy and sell with that? And that's not designed for the internet. It's not designed for the type of way we use money today. It's designed really back from the 50s and 60s. That's where we get this technology. So they keep having these old legacy systems that go on top of legacy systems that go on top of legacy systems, and they're very, very unstable. They're easy to break. They're a central location, so there's so many problems with them that we've been using digital money for probably since the 90s, nearly every one of us, because it's just been clicking and using and swiping and so on. So we're used to using digital money.
Right, and the fraud that we're all dealing with today as a result of the broken aspects of that system. So there's an evolution that's going to happen. So how does Bitcoin kind of tap into that? Because I want to make sure that we have time to share with people your visionary idea for the platform to create a peer-to-peer way for people to accumulate and educate themselves about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin specifically.
Okay, so I love talking about this, and it's probably more important to understand how this plays a role. But right now, I think the simple role is, the question is, if not now, when? That's the question. If not now, when? If you're not getting into Bitcoin today, you're getting into Bitcoin tomorrow. The question is, are you going to be part of the early adopters, or are you going to be part of the early majority? When is it going to happen? This is not a fad. This is now technology. Money itself is a technology. Money itself has always evolved to new forms of money, and this is one of the new forms. And one of the key things about this is there is no need for a centralized location to control us. And when we have freedom of privacy, we have the hallmarks of freedom of democracy. Without democracy, without privacy, it's difficult to have democracy. We go into this panopticon, or this class of 1984, these ideas from authors from many, many years ago, where the establishment, who don't want us to be free, they would sell us the bullshit that drug dealers use it, pornography does it, people who are crooks use this. But I would put it forward to anyone who says such rubbish and ludicrous statements, the number one choice of currency for everything bad is the American dollar, right? So it's just a ridiculous statement. So what do you want to do, and how do you want to get it? Shall I transition into, there are 3 ways to get Bitcoin?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. So the first way to get Bitcoin is you are a special technician. You have software skills, you have mining skills, you have hardware, you have some money, you can have a couple of grand, you have electricity, you have internet skills, and you're savvy and you know how to do what we call mining. In other words, you can be part of transactions and doing the processes, and you can be part of bringing new coins into existence. And this is a slow way to get it. If you want to get a lot of Bitcoins in your pocket, you have to have a lot of mining machines, and usually it can take between 10 months and a year to get break even if you're in a pool and you know what you're doing. If you go for 5 months of learning curve, it's a little bit longer. And if you don't know what you're looking at, you'll get ripped off, and the machine and the hardware that you're buying, you won't do. And just think of this for a minute. Just think like this. If you and I were out in the minefields in Dooley, right in the middle of Australia, and we went up to a miner and we said, hey, we're out here to dig and mine for gold. How do we do it? Where do we get the gold? That miner's just going to say, piss off. I'm not telling you where to get the mine. I'm in competition with you, right? And so not everyone's out there telling people how they get Bitcoins through mining. It's not an easy way to do it. Some people with programming skills, it's easy, let them do it. That's the one way. The second way to get it is buy it retail. Now, that first way, I call it digging into the roots, right? You want a shovel, you want to dig down into the roots. The second way I call pruning the tree. So you go into a stock market and you buy Bitcoin at the market price. Today, it's maybe $16,000 or $17,000 to buy one Bitcoin. You don't have to buy one Bitcoin. You can buy $100 worth of Bitcoin. So they just give you a bunch of zeros and a few numbers at the end, and that's $100 worth of Bitcoin. And you can send that into your wallet. But it works pretty much the same as a normal stock market on the NASDAQ or on what's it called, CME, the Mercantile Exchange in Chicago, or on the New York Stock Exchange. You just go and buy it and you sell it, and you buy it and sell it. And right now, actually, they're doing, you can short it and you can go long. In other words, right now there are futures being sold on Bitcoin at the CME, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. They do futures. So this legitimizes Bitcoin. This happened on the 18th of December. And so you can go and do that if you know about trading, and if you know about that, that's one way to do it. It means you need a lot of money, and you need a lot of money to lose. And because it's volatile at the moment, if you buy it for 15 or 18 grand and someone decides to short it and it goes down, then you're going to lose a lot of money. Opposite is also true if you're buying it from an asset point of view. In other words, you want to buy it to have a store of value. So that's the second way to do it. The third way to do it is through our platform, the GCCF platform, which is a peer-to-peer
Global
giving system. Fund. Correct, global cryptocurrency funding. It's a way to build a funding organization, and we fund each other in Bitcoin. And the basic bottom line is this: people who believe what you believe, that getting $100 worth of Bitcoin to 1 billion people around the planet is going to do a couple of different things. One, it's going to have the stability of the Bitcoin, and it's going to increase the value of the Bitcoin. So when more people are using this, and we don't see, I'm on a little phone right now, a little Android phone, and so I could drop one of these Android phones right into a village in the middle of Africa, and they've got, connection to the internet. And it's not that they're a bank account; they become a bank, a fully bona fide bank, and they can start sending and creating economy right where they are. They don't need permission to innovate. They don't need permission from the government. They don't need permission from the banks. They have a phone, a connection to the internet, and this rising billion of people can start accessing money who the people in the banking system call unbank worthy. They don't want to call it that, but that's exactly what they say when they say unbanked. They're not worthy of credit and trust and money. So we can do this by sharing. And what's the easiest and simplest way to spread news around the planet? Through a system called word of mouth, the jungle telegraph, so to speak. And so how do we get people to share the idea about Bitcoin is a revolutionary way to use money? Well, we empower them through donating Bitcoin to them personally, so that they can then be in a financial enough to be able to go and talk about it, because they've got to expend resources, just like you're doing now.
What I really like about it is that there's a huge learning curve with this cryptocurrency revolution. And so what happens is that people actually have to walk through it. And there's the personal process, is really what I'm interested in having specifically even women being more empowered around their finances so that they're actually being accountable. And so you have to learn you have to get a wallet or a couple wallets, and you have to actually learn how to acquire some, purchase some, just a nominal amount to start the process, right? So that alone, getting people past that, there's a lot of resistance there for people that, again, it's something new, it's changed. So the aspect of educating people and it not being just limited to certain people, but this is truly a currency that is for the people. I mean, this is, again, coming at it from more of that.
It really is by the people, for the people. No bullshit slogan. That's exactly what it is. Right. And if you can send a text, like if you literally can send an SM text from a phone to another phone, it's exactly the same process of sending Bitcoin. In fact, you need to be a little bit wary because it's so easy to be able to send someone a Bitcoin and go, oh, I meant 0.1 of a Bitcoin. I just sent them a Bitcoin. Oh, maybe we want to think about how you do it. It is simple. And as more people, this is an important part, certainty about stability of how this Bitcoin works also increases the more people use it. And as more people use it, we do an innovation process. The innovation for programmers who go, wow, there's now 15 million people have just started using Bitcoin. Well, they're going to want to buy things from companies, and companies are going to integrate that Bitcoin into their reconciliation process and how they do taxes and how they do their books and stuff like that. And right now we're in the beginning of that. So programmers out there, instead of using Quicken and QuickBooks and Money and all those different software, there's going to be new ways to do this where that'll be bypassed. So don't worry about companies doing this. As we grow the grassroots of people acquiring Bitcoin, keeping Bitcoin and using Bitcoin, then the innovation will come for the companies to be able to more and more. But I mean, you can buy stuff on travel agents now. I could go buy books, I could buy, I can eat out, I can get travel, I can travel across, I can buy a car, buy a house.
So people, Bitcoin is being used and we can buy it and use it online. I know that that's an option, especially more, not just in the US, but more globally. I mean, I think that other areas are probably quicker to start adopting this than we are here in the US. But Carrie, fell off, but specifically wanted to know how do we engage the everyday person, Patrick? And also just looking at, there's a lot, how do we navigate through like the hype of the cryptocurrency? Because I get daily people wanting to invest in platforms, the get rich quick schemes. Like we're talking about just more of obviously diving into the philosophy and the education aspect, but the goal through the GCCF is really just to get billion people having Bitcoin, like to get it to the masses. I think we have more Robin Hood kind of mentality, the way that we operate in the world, that we're really wanting to have everyone to have access to this, just like everyone should have access to clean food, real food and clean water. To me, this is a basic human right that's going to level the playing field on the planet when we can have people in every part of this world having access to currency the same way we do in more of these first-class societies. So that's really a particular interest of mine. How do we make it available to everybody? How does it work for someone, in Peru versus here? Like this is something that's going to completely, as long as they have a phone, right? Completely.
Right. So a couple of things that maybe back up a little bit is one of the easiest ways to get people to use Bitcoin is send them Bitcoin. So when you donate some Bitcoin to someone, $100 worth of Bitcoin, they got it in their wallet and they go, wow, that was pretty easy. Is this worth something? They become interested and intrigued and fascinated by this. But here's a couple of really important things with it, because there are many systems out there. One of the things with a decentralized system or a peer-to-peer system is that the Bitcoin doesn't go to the platform. And if you're being offered an opportunity where the Bitcoin goes into a centralized location, they claim they're going to use it, hoard it, invest it, trade it, build it, grow it, I don't know, whatever they're going to do, and they're going to go pay it back out to the system. You've got to ask these questions: how and why? And if you are not getting the money Bitcoin into the wallet that you control, you don't own the Bitcoin. If you're looking at a screen that says you got numbers, you don't own those.
Patrick, can you repeat that, please? Because I don't think a lot of people understand that. If you do not own the wallet that the money's going into, you don't have access to it, right?
That's right. You don't own it. Right. All right. So let's say that you log into abc.com, right? abc.com, and you log into the back office and you look at all, you've got all this money ticking over, these numbers. I call it screen money. And they say, okay, you've got 2.3 Bitcoins, you've got 4.4 Bitcoins, you've got 5. That is just all rubbish until you say send to my wallet. And when that Bitcoin is in your wallet, then it's real. But if it's on someone else, and even if the money is real or the Bitcoin is real on their wallet, they control it. They can close down and walk away. You don't own anything. And so the idea with the way that we're doing it is GCCF doesn't do any of that. It goes directly from peer to peer, from person wallet to person wallet. It's like donating a bag of rice, but it's difficult to travel with a bag of rice or to send a bag of rice or to swap a bag of rice for something. So you donate X amount of money worth of Bitcoin. So that's the peer-to-peer thing. That's incredibly important to understand. Possession is 100% of the law. You own it, right, if you've got it in your wallet. So that's really, really, really key to do that. The other thing is when you're experiencing, what was the other question? Because I was about to go off on a different tangent.
We only have a few minutes left. I think it's really about the accessibility and making it available to everyone, and like the simple steps to get started, and why, the why behind the peer-to-peer platform, that kind of laying out, there also being like that educational component of the academy and all of that. But how do people get started specifically with the mastermind?
Okay, now we're talking about getting started with the GCCF. Okay, so if you want to accumulate Bitcoin, you basically have got to have $100, right? $100. If you've got $100, you're going to give that to someone. It's going to open you up to building up an organization to allow people to do the same thing for you. That's your one-time investment. That's all it requires. It's not $100 every month from out of your pocket if you're doing it correctly. If you're not doing it correctly, then maybe this type of organization structure is not for you. But if you've got some sort of networking background, if you're a person that has spoken to people and you want to accumulate Bitcoin, it's incredibly easy to do it this way. So there's not a lot of risk capital as far as if you put your business hat on and say, well, how much does this cost me? What's the bang for buck? What's my investment? What's my risk capital? Your risk capital is $100. That's it. And find a few people, 5 or 6 people who want to do the same thing, and you're on your way. Now, are you a bit of a radical? In other words, do you really want to change the system? Do you really want a better life for not just you and your family, but all the other people who are being ripped off by the banking society, the powers to be? This is some way to actually state your voice, because money is a type of language, and Bitcoin, if you've got enough of it, it's a voice. And if you can give a voice to this conversation about what's really going on in our world, it helps when we have 1 billion new people who can put their voice and they can vote with their voice. And their voice is, I'm going to use my resources, money, to do this instead of do that, instead of having the 1% of the 1% roll up all the time. This is a way to change the complete playing field. So I think that answered your question in a...
I think it did. And I'm going to put some information specifically as far as the link, and we're going to have more of these conversations. This is just sort of the teaser. We're figuring out all of this, but essentially this is something, our relationship has been ongoing because of another project that we worked on where it was involving some cryptocurrency. So right now I'm sort of the point person here in the US. So if anybody's interested in being connected to you in this project, which I do look at it as a project, like bringing together the global tribe. And again, my passion for tapping into the collective wealth potential of the tribe, and how do we leverage and level that playing field for everyone so that it is, everybody has an opportunity. So I will put some information. We'll have more to come. This recording will be available. And yeah, this is just the beginning. So do you have anything that you want to add before we hop off? I know you're...
Oh, yeah, I've got lots and lots of different things that I'd like to add.
One quick closing statement.
One quick closing statement. I did have one, but I've forgotten what that was. Now, Neil's going to kill me because he said, why did you even bother asking me? Bitcoin is not a zero-sum game. If you go on the stock market, for you to win, someone has to lose. That's the way it works. For you to win, someone has to lose. But with Bitcoin, everyone rises and falls on the same tide. And so this can make a huge impact in the way we can literally change the way the world works, and we don't need permission to do so.
Beautiful. Thanks, Patrick. Enjoy your little retreat there with your family at the ski resort in Sweden. And I really appreciate you and your time. We'll have more to come. Thanks everyone for hopping on. That's gorgeous. Time for you to go ski. Thanks everyone. Have a beautiful holiday. Talk to you soon.
See ya.
New year.